Hey everyone, welcome to our panel. So excited to have you all here. South by may look very different this year, but we're all still so excited to be chatting. This panel, we're going to be discussing how virtuality has changed live music with the intro of live streams, online rap battles, all these different virtual events over the past year. And we have some great speakers. And I would love if each of you guys want to introduce yourself, say your title, where you work and what you do, and maybe if you have a favorite virtual event over the past year, let us know what it is.
Ms. Lywicki, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I'm happy to begin.
Okay.
And thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat with you guys. I'm Jen Lywicki. I am a director on the talent and industry relations team across Pandora and SiriusXM. And I oversee the division that focuses on artist and brand partnerships. So I have had a lot of highlights in this somewhat dark period. We've produced about 29 virtual events to date, but I would say a favorite moment would be closing out the year. I'm sure for most they can relate to 2020 being done, but we had an event with Lipa, which took place in late December, and that was our last show of this, crazy new venture into digital, and she's incredible. I don't think I need to promote her that much, but that was definitely a highlight.
Lisa, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. Hi, I'm Lisa Ram. I am a vice president at Superfly, and I work in our corporate development and or corporate strategy and business development portion of the business. Superfly is probably best known for creating Bonnaroo. We're known for creating, all types of cultural experiences. So we were both the creator of experiences as well as an agency for other people creating experiences. And I would say, during this time period, our world has completely shifted. We, have a lot of, large scale experiences to date, like Outside Lands. We have a Friends experience currently going. But we also, really pivoted during this time period and have been looking at the virtual space for some time. We've made some investments into the virtual world, and a lot of our clients transitioned over from in real life, of course, to virtual. So Superfly has done a lot of work in terms of creating those virtual experiences. I would say, actually, though, my most memorable experience, I'm from the Bay Area, and I would actually say it was the Versus Too Short E40. I don't think I have a friend from the Bay Area who wasn't on FaceTime, dancing, completely having, the best time ever. So, just kick it to Gary.
I'm actually glad you said that, because some people question why we did some of these other battles where we knew the numbers weren't going to be there, but culturally we had to do it. Obviously, being huge fans of E40 and Short, but I love that you said that. Hi, my name is Gary Morella. I am CEO and co-founder of Beat Club with my partner Timbaland. I'm a co-founder in Versus, and then I'm CEO of my management company. We manage about 15 producers and songwriters. I'm, of course, going to reference a Versus battle, one of my favorite things of this year. Mine was actually the Gucci Mane Jeezy one. That was a behind the scenes. It was a lot to deal with, but when that came together and those two made peace, it was a pretty iconic moment for us based on what we were dealing with behind the scenes. So nice to meet everybody.
And I guess I kind of forgot to introduce myself in that, but I'm Tatiana Cirisano. I'm a music business reporter at Billboard, and I cover mainly music tech, which is how I kind of started really covering over the past year very heavily. So that's where I come in. And I think that something that's always so fascinating to me when talking about live streaming and virtual events is how quickly this industry has been forced to accelerate. It has gone through so much change in just a year, in an amount of change that would take like a decade for any other industry. So I think maybe a good place to start is like, what have you learned over the past year, and what have been your experiences of like growing through this industry that's evolving so quickly?
Yeah, I can start. First of all, it's difficult to believe it's only been a year because it feels like 10. So some of my learnings is that, you know, I have to color my hair more often than I thought I had to. But Pandora and SiriusXM are a company that have traditionally produced 30 to 40 live events over the course of a year. So this was a huge disruption to our industry and our landscape. And virtual live stream was not something that we had ever explored previous to having to explore it. So it was a quick pivot, but I also think it took a lot of education and really in the beginning kind of sitting back and talking to our partners, our music community. We explored about a dozen different virtual platforms, and they all had different offerings, really, diverse selection of things that we had to choose from. So, it was just informing ourselves in the beginning. We ended up partnering with a company called Maestro, a platform that you may be familiar with, but they had a lot of benefits in kind of the flexibility and customization that we were looking for. We really wanted our events to be similar to our in real life events, and that it was an experience for the consumer. That was really important to us. So there were, various different interactive extensions that they offered that, from merch giveaways, there's the chat functionality, there's a watch with friends feature. There, as a pre-show trivia, we just were looking for someone that could really offer a robust, variety of engagements for our consumers. So I think I mentioned this, but today we produced 29 of those virtual events, and it came with a great deal of learning. It was a very steep learning curve, but we had to learn quickly. And some of the nuances I would say that our team, had to quickly in tune to was some of the legal considerations, the new, data privacy, security that we were not used to having to, comply with. There were a ton of new licensing and rights associated with streaming music and recording music and playing music in this way, and the costs associated with those. Producing an event from afar where you're not physically there to, maybe direct or tell an artist they can't wear that explicit t-shirt or, to move that water bottle, and just really adapting to a COVID safe environment and ensuring that we were, protecting and keeping our partners safe. So yeah, it's been quite a year.
I'm going to sound repetitive to what Jen just said, but very similar. We at Versus produced about 30 something battles. We learned a lot this last year. Still feels like 2020, feels like December 60th, to be honest, 2020. But a lot of the same issues: licensing rights, fees, remote producing. Timbaland, Swiss, Monique, we haven't been in the same room. I haven't even seen Tim in person for a year and a half. So what Jen said, it's very similar, some of the hurdles we ran into with brand integration, partnerships, sponsors being on set, on location, somebody putting a product up that they can't, and in real time telling them to remove it during a stream. Similar situation as well in finding a partner. We had plenty of other platforms to choose from. We went with Apple June of last year. It really made sense from a production standpoint. They did a lot of the heavy lifting. COVID, obviously during COVID, it was really tough with doing this in a safe environment with a skeletal crew in terms of the production team. One person from my team has been to every battle. So we learned a lot as well on producing remotely. And the licensing issue has been quite a concern. For Versus in particular, on Instagram, we're covered by the Facebook licenses. On the Apple side, that was part of the deal we put in place with them to cover the sync licensing. But the Versus battles have grown on their own on the user-generated content side, all over YouTube, all over Twitch. And I know the copyright holders and publishers have been chasing them down, as they always do. But it's been a learning experience. And then on the technical side, I think we really do have it figured out. Roland, which I mentioned recently in a Billboard piece, does not get enough credit. They really had a solution to the technical issues. And by the way, I'm grateful for the Teddy Riley mishap. I think that brought a bigger spotlight on everything that we were doing, and it helped us fast forward to try to get a solution quickly. And Roland came up with that. So a lot of hurdles, a lot learned, and it feels like now we're pretty aware of what to look out for on future battles.
Yeah, I would say on our side, especially when it comes to kind of the agency side of the business, there is so much of a learning curve for everyone, right? I mean, even with how involved we are on the production side, in order to make, everyone's kind of wanting to up the ante on what you can do from a virtual perspective. You kind of started the pandemic with couch concerts and people filming in their rooms, and then there's just kind of this acceleration, and it kind of went in different ways where, technology either went in one way, or sometimes it went into gaming and virtual, and other times it's just how you're producing the event itself. And so a lot of what we had to transition into was really on the production side of using different platforms. I feel like so much of our time was spent really on the research side of being able to evaluate everything from, the Maestros of the world to the VFairs to all different types of things, even just utilizing Zoom and the breakout features in a different way, or being able to have a challenge of a client who needed to use one type of platform based off of, a contract that they had, and then the challenge of being able to use different things on the back end. Additionally, I would say also the coaching that goes along with it, right? I mean, just the production of trying to instruct somebody how to become, because you're essentially handing the camera over to whoever you're asking to film themselves. They all of a sudden have to become the director, the producer on their end. You have to get everyone, the right lighting kit, things like that. So doing that early on in the pandemic was definitely a challenge and an acceleration of teaching people how to do those things. But I think, it just continues to evolve, especially when it comes to the virtual sense. And when we take that and what the meaning is, I think it's been really interesting to see how, some people have really thrived in certain platforms. And even though it's not, crazy innovative or like throwing a bunch of AR, VR, XR technology, people have really been able to, find a unique way in each one of those verticals.
Yeah, what do you think is the thing that will make all of those different types of virtual events special? Like, what is it that makes these events, even though they're not in person and can never be the same as live, still special for fans?
I think that some of the ways we're trying to create those connections and really special moments for artists to, reach their fans in a time where that is, not how they would traditionally be reaching their fans. And for these fans to be able to get those experiences that they're certainly craving in a time when they can only get it from their homes. So some of the, I think we've had to be really thoughtful and innovative in building out our events. We've partnered with a platform called Loop to create these virtual meet and greets that have been some of the most just special, kind of moments that have come out of this. It's by way of our data that we identify these super fans and basically surprise them with an invite to meet their favorite musician. And we've, been able to kind of be voyeurs and watching some of the behind the scenes. And it's just a beautiful connection. And I think that's coming in a time when people are, in need of those types of connections. We've partnered, with our SiriusXM hosts to have, intimate conversations between the artists. I think some kind of behind the scenes almost, but really detailed and thoughtful conversations have come out of, everyone's shared experience. No one's been unique in having to be sitting at their home. It doesn't matter, from, Dua Lipa to Louis Capaldi. I think we've just been able to hear some beautiful stories and connect in that way. Some of the artists that we've partnered with have had collaborations that were, kind of a surprise on screen. HER and Skip Marley in a conversation with Sway. And just, I think we're trying to constantly keep up and innovate and find these different touch points. we've also, been really thoughtful about the production, trying to work with the artist and hire their teams that, maybe are not working in a way that they were before. They're, whether it's tech and lighting or tour managers and their bands, and just trying to kind of broaden the reach of employment for people that are in this industry and have suffered greatly. We've also, purchased merch that has maybe gone unsold during this period of time, and featured those as giveaways throughout our shows. So yeah, and just creating some moments that, in a world full of sadness, we're trying to give those special sparks.
It's interesting. We've used Looped as well. Shanti did VIP meet and greet with Looped, and I thought it was a great experience. I can't remember what Erica Badu did, but she did something post versus battle and sold a ton of merch. It was almost like an after party. One of the things we are trying to do more of is I'm close with the Veeps guys, Benji and Joel Madden, and I've seen them really carve out their space in this area. And I'd like to see more artists on Versus take advantage of the fact, I think it was Azov's team or somebody a while back when the Babyface battle happened, he said the only thing we couldn't do was stick him on tour. And as tours are starting to roll out now, I think we're going to see more artists take advantage of Versus type platforms, not just to announce their single, but to go out and push, a tour announcement. We have one coming up this Sunday where one of the artists is going to announce their tour date. So similar on my end as well. Looped on the VIP side, and we've done some integrations with Network, the merch company, who's been great in helping us support some of the artists and paying them for their streams, to be a part of Versus. So I don't know if I answered your question correctly, but I had to chime in there. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think, the accessibility to talent has never been, more relevant right now, right? I mean, everyone is really, you see it with the emergence of everything from Cameo to Community. Talent is really becoming a different force when it comes to being able to sit at home and being accessible if everybody's in front of the screen. I would say, there's no replacing being able to have a one-on-one moment with your favorite artist via Zoom. Even though that's not in person, it's still a rewarding experience that you never forget, especially if you actually are able to be seen. So a lot of those buy-up experiences are really, really valuable. I think that the other thing that's been kind of more so the long tail of it is also being able to have that virtual experience in a different setting or space. I would say like a unique form was on Clubhouse they did the Lion King musical. It was an incredible production, but what was also unique is that you as a speaker can be brought up and you actually can have that one-on-one time where you actually have your voice heard. That's incredibly rewarding. I think that anytime you get to be nominated for those kinds of things, you just feel more intimate. And I think that that's transitioning over a lot into kind of this cross community of virtual and gaming. Part of the reason why gaming is such a huge community that translates over to this is because you have a voice and you can have a persona in whatever virtual setting you are. You can customize it and you feel like you're showing your true identity. So anytime you're in a virtual setting where even if you're just an avatar where you're clapping your hands or you're writing in the chat box, you're being featured. And I think that people more and more are starting to adapt to that behavior, and it's still very, very much rewarding.
That was one of the most important reasons that we wanted to keep Versus on Instagram with our partners, is if we lost that chat component and that engagement, it just wouldn't be the same. And we still have it with the Twitter UI on the Apple user interface, but could not agree more. And in terms of Clubhouse, we did one this last Monday where I had Timbaland and Metro Boomin and people talking with fans. And that's one of the highlights. I agree with you, Misa, during this time. I think, unfortunately, you are going to see people, even such as myself, getting comfortable being at home, not wanting to go to the office. I was reading something that Bill Gates said a couple months ago, that business travel moving forward has changed forever. And the thought of getting on a plane and going to New York for a meeting, that's absurd to me right now. And I don't know if I'm going to change even after vaccinations and travel as much as I was before. But I'm going to shut up.
And what Misa brought up about gaming is also so fascinating because yeah, it's like you can go to these concerts as an avatar virtually, and why leave your home and things like that. I mean, still, I miss live concerts more than anyone. I will still go, but it's like that is providing that experience. And so are things like virtual reality. So I actually wanted to ask you guys anyway, like, what do you think are the new technologies, the emerging technologies that are going to be a bigger part of virtual events in the future?
I think one in particular I've seen is Twitch. And I say it's just on my end, managing producers and seeing what musicians, such as Logic and people like that are doing. In particular, my case was Tim's Twitch page, and he launched it. It's been very successful. And now what we're seeing is A-level artists listening to beats on there. And I can't say who it is, but it's a major artist who just heard a track on Tim's Twitch page who said, I want it, recorded it, shot the video, and it's his first coming single. So Twitch has been a huge component in the artist and producer space this last year.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is where I totally nerd out on. It's interesting because Twitch derived, from a gaming platform, but it transitioned and made such a headway for what they're doing in the music space. And I think that that's because gaming correlates so much with what we're doing with where music is really going. A lot of the things that we looked into, we invested into a platform called Wave XR, and that is something where it's a completely virtual environment. The artist is actually turned into an avatar and wears a full sensory motion suit, and you can enter in via Twitch, or you can enter in via VR, and you actually can watch your favorite artist perform live, and you can control, the outcome of things. You can type in the chat box, different, you can write into your artist, or you can vote for things and the set will change. Additionally, I think just even the concept of what artists are, because of this time period and how much everything has accelerated from a content perspective even, there's a company called Strange Loop Studios. They're out of LA, and they are doing essentially an entire label of just virtual artists. And they're taking it from the standpoint of being a multimedia content production hub, for all artists. When you're coming out with a music video or you're doing something on TikTok, all of that is content that's feeding your beast. They're coming in from the other way of if we are an artist that is created virtually and we're creating the content that surrounds that and people are contributing to it, how does that impact what that's going to look like in the future? How are people going to hear my song via Twitch as a virtual artist and take that music and collaborate with me? And so I think it's just going to be, virtual is an interesting world because, the Travis Scott Fortnite example is the perfect one that everyone kind of saw. But the areas and crossover is just going to be more and more, I think, especially because you do have that fan connection whenever you're in a virtual setting of being able to enter into kind of a portal.
Yeah, and I think that makes it even more fascinating to talk about like what the future of this looks like. I mean, we know that we've always known that live events are going to come back at some point, but I think we're actually getting to the point where we're planning for that and how to have a hybrid, maybe virtual and physical live industry coexist. So what are all your thoughts on that? Like how a hybrid model could work, or what live music even looks like a year from now?
Jen, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I think we could all, kind of guess what that looks like. I think, for us, we're eager to get back into the real world. I think we all miss that live music experience. I think we can't really predict right now what, we'll have to comply with. Will you have to be vaccinated to attend a show? Will you have to show that you had a negative COVID test in a certain amount of time? I think we're going to see a surge of people that are super eager to get back into that live setting. And I think, on the other hand, we're also going to see people that are really comfortable and enjoying their experiences from home. And I think the beauty of what we've learned is that we can appease both and, kind of broaden our audience base by way of virtual and in real life.
And from a production standpoint, not to plug the Veeps guys, I mean, I have no business with them, but
Absolutely.
if you look at their average production value is $15,000-$20,000 for an artist that rents a place, rents a venue, goes and does a live stream. And I think artists in particular are also going to look at that from the point of how much am I going to spend on the production side for a live thing versus doing this, like Jen said, reaching a much bigger audience globally from a monetary standpoint. So.
And I think about it too, because a lot of the events that we've produced have been pre-recorded. So we have a little bit of quality control over, the sound, and we work with the artist teams to ensure, the highest quality standards. And I think when you get into a live stream scenario, that dynamic changes a little bit. So it will be interesting to explore if it is, obviously there's opportunity to be mixing and mastering at the same time. But I think we've just laid so much foundation. We've created so many new pathways to reach larger audiences. And I think everyone's going to have the opportunity to go to shows in their preferred method, if that's live or in your couch or in a virtual, Twitch setting with your avatar. I think there's a whole new world.
Yeah, I really look at it as like we would all be remiss if we didn't take opportunity of everything that we've learned and created during this time period for when we go back to live. I think, we did Outside Lands as an Inside Lands as a virtual festival. I think that technology is going to only continue to evolve. I also think from the artist perspective, Post Malone just announced today that he's doing the Pokemon virtual concert. I think that artists are going to start booking things like that. They're going to be like, here's my virtual concert, and then here's my in real life concert, and then here are the other things that I'm going to do. So I think more and more, to Jen's point, you are just hitting such a global audience that, what you're doing in person, it's, there's only a certain amount of tickets you can sell to that. When you're doing something virtually, the amount of sponsorship, the audience you're reaching, all of that is just, magnified by the world.
And not to have my shameless plug, but to show an artist like Ashanti or Monica or these artists that there's, 1.5 million people sitting there watching them for 2 hours straight during something like this is, it's hard to recapture an audience like that.
Totally. And Gary and Misa, you guys both brought up in different ways, like the monetization aspect of this, which is also really interesting to me, because I think that the virtual event space has really still been learning about like what types of monetization work for these events. There's pay-per-view, there's subscriptions, there's like meet and greets, VIP ticketing. Are there any other like monetization opportunities that you see becoming a big thing? I don't know if like Misa with gaming, like selling virtual merch maybe could be a thing. I don't know. But like what types of monetization in the future do you see for virtual events?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's of course ticket sales, there's the buy-up experiences that we all talked about, but the virtual and digital goods is a huge component of everything that we're looking into. The fashion world for sure took a deep dive into what they can do to customize avatars. Ralph Lauren rolled out something with Snapchat. Gucci had customized avatars. You even saw Balenciaga do the Afterworld video game. And so when you think about that and how that translates over to a digital setting, whether it's the merch that you're receiving and it's a care package that you're getting at home, or it's something that, if you're an avatar and you want to customize your fan attire in your virtual sense, you want to get a Travis Scott skin. When I say skin, I mean like a t-shirt. Or if you want to, have something that is a badge, that shows that you attended something, all of those digital goods from a monetization perspective, it's a fraction to make, but the monetization in terms of being able to capitalize on it is astronomical. So especially in a Twitch setting, in any of these virtual or AR, VR worlds, and even when it comes to our apps and just showing, our digital badges, all of those things are different ways of monetization.
We struggled on our end in terms of do we take versus down the subscription model? And there were a couple of reasons why we didn't. The other partners in particular wouldn't allow the same UI with the Instagram handles, which we thought was huge. But we also felt taking this to a subscription model, as much as we wanted to monetize it in the beginning, I think it would have been I think it would have really killed a lot of our views right off the bat. And one of the things that we focused on in the beginning was keeping it organic, keeping it free. And what we've been able to do on the monetization side was bring in key sponsors. And that's allowed us to pay artists. That's allowed us to monetize on our end. And we have a very big announcement coming up very soon. That'll probably be out when this airs, of a partner with Versus. So we've waited patiently on the monetization side, and we're glad we did. We're glad we kept it free for the time being.
Break the news here, Gary. Come on.
Keep me posted on that announcement, Gary.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
Keep me posted on that announcement.
I
We're talking
will.
about reporter here.
It's coming out next week.
I think similarly, just to what Gary's talking about, we've really identified the right brand partners to come in and, help support, make these virtual events possible through, Pandora and Serious Lens. And, for those partners, it's also a way to connect to their key market and audience in a very unique, direct way. And they're really the ones bringing these moments to life. So those key, advertising partners are really important to us.
We've also learned a valuable lesson what not to do in that space. And I'm not going to say which ones in particular, but the wrong sponsor, the wrong product placement. Jen, you know this, it can damage a brand quickly. And it's a very careful balance, at least for us, and how many partners we bring in. And product placement is key. I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. From our perspective, we're looking to do more organic integrations, such as like Postmates. I think Lil Nas X postmated a Maserati to Billy Ray Cyrus. You heard about it in the press, but it wasn't a big advertisement about it. So that's something that we're looking into moving forward, because one of the things that we've always said was we don't want Versus to look like a race car driver's jacket with 12 brands and logos. So.
And I think there's probably going to be a lot of people watching this that maybe want to get into the virtual events business but aren't yet. So what advice would you give to artists and businesses that want to get further into virtual events? It's kind of a tough one.
I could just jump in. If it's an artist or a producer, I think it's build it organically, know who your audience is. Back to my last answer about the production side, I think what this has done is shown artists, not just on Beeps, but any other platform, you could come out with very little money, low production cost, low ticket price, and still have an audience and still monetize that. And I think knowing who your audience is, and listen, if you're on a small budget, do something small, production, set up your own. One of the things Beeps did, I think it was less than $5,000. It was just like an SIR type studio that the artist did, and they made a lot of money, and there was very little overhead. So I think it's knowing your audience and knowing your audience really, and keeping your production costs low.
And I think even to piggyback on that, I'm seeing the emergence of a lot of new companies like Sessions, who's our Pandora founder, who I'm a personal admirer of, Tim Westergren, has always been on a mission to support the emerging artists, the independent artists that maybe doesn't have the financial backing or, all the marketing arms to be able to really, know how to navigate this. And he created a platform that is essentially dedicated to these independent artists finding their audience. And he's making that a service that's free to the artists, and they can essentially stream through Sessions and try and find ways to market themselves. So I think there's again, this has just been such a time of innovation and people that are thinking about how they can be helping artists that are really looking to find their audience. We're seeing more and more of that.
Yeah, I mean, everything I'm going to say is what's been said before, but I just, I can't stress like the discovery of these new platforms and being able to do something creative and innovative there. Whether it's Clubhouse and thinking about it from an audio first perspective of, you know, how can I create a unique experience on Clubhouse? What can I do that's different? Or if it's on Twitch and you are a music producer and you are creating something, or it's on TikTok where you know that it's a platform that is audio, you know, sampled first and it's going to get repurposed. How are you creating something that's different that can be recycled and, you know, used to foster somebody else's creativity? I think, you know, it's knowing your audience, but also knowing the platforms and using that to your advantage.
Yeah, those are all amazing points. And Jen, I'm so glad that you brought up sessions, because I think that that's one of the obstacles that we kind of have yet to figure out. And maybe sessions is the solution, but is that, you know, it's great that any artist can now do a virtual event and reach the world, but they're also competing with the world. They're not just competing with whatever other artists are playing a venue on a given city, you know, on a given night. It's the world. And that can be hard when you don't have the resources to promote and kind of break through the noise. So yeah, I think that that's a really fascinating issue that we still kind of have to figure out, is how to help emerging and independent artists promote their virtual events.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Jen.
No, I was just going to say, I think Tim's mission has always been so noble and grounded and like rooted in, you know, the working class musician and that music discovery as he, you know, built Pandora from the ground up. So I always just root for him, but I think it is a wonderfully thoughtful and just, you know, forward thinking model of helping that group of artists that maybe just don't know where to go from here.
One thing I was going to mention is Timbaland and I have been working on a company for about 1.5 years called Beat Club, and that is also focused on the independent artists. For the first time, an independent artist will have the tools, the educational component, the collaboration. There's a very strong A&R curation, but overall it's a place where an independent artist can go license a Timbaland beat or an acapella from Stara and access the top creators in the world. And there's been a couple other platforms out there that have similar functions, but just not the accessibility to the top creators in the world. So we're really excited about that.
And I have a few kind of questions for individually for each of you. So I guess Gary, to go first. What do you see? How do you see yourself continuing to innovate and build on Versus? You guys have created this amazing new platform within 1 year. Where do you go from here?
We had an announcement with the NFL recently that we did. That was pretty cool. A couple of weeks ago, we have another integration with another major sports league that we're announcing pretty soon. So we've looked into Versus Sports, the fighting space, which will be part of Versus Sports, the comedy part, Versus Comedy is coming out pretty soon. We've been careful and strategic, I guess you could say, on segueing into other formats, but that's coming soon. We didn't want to jump into other formats and genres too quickly. But I think the sports in the comedy side is what's really going to help broaden things for us as a platform overall.
Yeah, that's really cool. Excited to hear more about that. And then Jen, I think one of the reasons Pandora was able to pivot so quickly to live streams is because you already have these like great relationships with artists. So what goes into, you know, what happens when you partner with an artist on a live stream? Like, how does that process kind of work?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really is a partnership, and I think we're very dedicated to supporting our artist community. You know, they still have music that they're creating and an audience they want to reach and unique ways that they want to do that. And it's our goal to always support that craft and help them, you know, bring their music to their audience. And we do have a wonderful opportunity to do that through virtual. You know, the good news is we are slated for virtual events throughout the end of the year. And even if we hopefully go back into, you know, in real life events, we can definitely count on both. But yeah, just staying, you know, closely connected with our manager partners and our label partners and our agent partners, and ensuring that we are supporting their initiatives and promoting them in a way that, you know, maybe looks different than it did 1 year ago, but that we know across Pandora and SiriusXM, we have a really big, large, sizable opportunity to do so. And I think, online and hopefully beyond in the year 2021 or 2022.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
I know. I'm like, what year are we in now? 2020.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Misa, you kind of already answered this question a little bit, but I just wanted to ask you, because Superfly is the one company that that's here that started in physical, was such a, for so long, just a huge live touring company. Where do you see the live event side fitting in where do you see the virtual event side fitting in when live events resume? And I know you already kind of answered that, but specifically with Superfly.
Yeah, so we're not going anywhere when it comes to the live space. We're going to continue, nobody misses it more than us in terms of what that looks like. So that's going to still continue to be a huge part of our business. But yeah, no, in terms of what we're looking for the future is really the investment into both virtual artists as well as the virtual experience for artists. And what that means is, whether that's, a way of XR where you're actually, fully in a virtual world, or it's something where you're attending a concert through Roblox or through an actual game. As well as, the creation of virtual artists and what that media looks like. Additionally, I think, we spent so much time evaluating different platforms and seeing the white space in the market and things that were missing that we wish we had and components that, we wanted to be integrated into other things. And so we definitely are developing things as well in terms of the emergence of some new platforms.
Can I ask you a question, Misa, since you guys have, which festival is it, Bonnaroo?
Bonnaroo is, we have 4 founders, and we're still all at the company, and they started Bonnaroo, yeah.
Because one of the things, Tatiana, that you asked, and we've been talking about this, and I don't know if this is a hybrid of what would happen, but for, festivals, knowing now the virtual side of things, for festivals such as Bonnaroo and Coachella and Lollapalooza, do you think that we are going to see these festivals also have a virtual ticket for an artist that's on stage, X amount live and X amount just on their platform moving forward?
I think we actually were one of the first festivals that had kind of like a YouTube stream for it. And it was back in the day. I think we did it for Outside Lands.
Are we charging? Were you guys monetizing?
I don't think, no, it was just through YouTube, I believe. Okay. I think that what it's going to be going forward, because Coachella live streams their, festival. I think that now, live streaming is one thing, being able to just see those performances is one thing, and that virtual ticket might be something that's monetizable. But I think that it's also going to be an evolved space of it as well. I think that, to really truly be innovative, you're doing something where you're creating something in a virtual setting, in addition to kind of feeding off of what you're doing from a live perspective. Like I said, I think anybody who isn't thinking about how to live stream their concert festival or anything like that, you're just leaving something on the table there. But I also think that it's going to evolve in terms of what could be the after show? What could be maybe the virtual pre-show? What does it look like in a virtual sense? Are you having people enter in and it's just a YouTube stream? Are you having them enter into a different platform? Is it virtual in terms of avatar, or, there's just such a span of what that can look like that I think that everyone's going to have a different interpretation of that.
Well, this has been amazing and just got me excited about the future, which is a good mood to be in these days. So thank you guys for sharing all of your knowledge. Do any of you have any final thoughts before I wrap it up? It's okay if you don't.
Nope.
We should all go to a live show together in the future.
Yeah. Let's go. Lollapalooza. I think that's
we can actually meet each other live.
Okay. No,
Can't wait.
Tatiana.
Yeah, thank you guys. And thanks everyone for watching. This has been great.
Jen, good seeing you. Misa, great meeting you.